Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure folks will trickle in as we go, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. We welcome to improvements to Codman Square Park, the final design. Next slide. Just so everyone knows, this meeting is being recorded. And I know a lot of people are familiar with Zoom, but some aren't. So I just wanted to go over a few rules. In a moment, our team's going to give a short presentation followed by a listening session and a discussion. If a question comes up during the presentation, please feel free to add it to the chat and we'll address it after the presentation. If you're joining on Zoom on a computer, use the raise hand tool and we will unmute you. And if anyone's calling in on a phone, use *9 to raise your hand and we'll call on you, and use *6 to unmute. Next slide, please. All right, so we want everyone to feel comfortable sharing their questions and comments verbally or in the chat. And if you're not comfortable with sharing any comments either in person or through the chat, you're also welcome to reach out to me directly if you'd like to provide comments and discuss the project further. And I think we'll go ahead and drop the email in the chat for people to copy and paste. Next slide, please. So in our meeting, we're going to go over a few things. Please call in. If you're calling in, oh, I already said this, I'm sorry. Use *9 to raise your hand and use the raise your hand tool to ask questions or comments. Next slide, please. So now onto the project. We're going to introduce the team, and then we'll go through an overview of the project schedule. Our design team will go through a presentation summarizing the feedback we've heard so far and the evolution of the design over time, incorporating community feedback along the way. And finally, we'll go over the final design for the park. The goal of this meeting is to make sure you're all on board with the final design of the park before it goes into construction documents and then construction. I know this project has been going on for a long time and lots of people have been involved, and we're really excited to keep this project moving forward. At the end, we'll go over the final concepts and ideas about the concept plan, and we'll go over closing remarks and next steps. Next slide, please. I'm Nellie Ward. I'm the project manager. I use they, them pronouns. I joined the Boston Parks team in August, and I'm really excited to get involved with this project that's been going on for so long. We have Kathy Baker Eclipse, the director of Capital Plan, with us as well. We have Shauna Dixon is here moderating the Zoom meeting for us tonight. Cynthia Johnson is here, the president of the Codman Square Neighborhood Council and Farmers Market Coordinator. And Cynthia has been instrumental in getting this project going off the ground and holds the Brown Fund contract with Destiny, our local artist who we're super excited about. And Cynthia is our point of contact with the community, and we're very grateful for her involvement. And we have Kyle Zick and Rob, who are our landscape architects that have been responsible and for managing design and working together with the rest of us to come up with a design that everyone feels great about and community engagement. And then we have Destiny Palmer, who's our local artist for the letter art for the I Am Codman Square piece of the project and our Brown Fund recipient. Next slide, please. So we have some elements that are pretty instrumental in the Boston Parks guidelines, and there are a lot of different components, but including community input is very important to us. So that's what we're doing here tonight. And the park design is not only guided by community feedback, but it's also informed by safety regulations and regulatory guidelines like ADA accessibility and City of Boston priorities. And then finally, Parks and Recreation goals, which we'll go over now. Next slide, please. So the City of Boston goals are increasing walkability to parks across the city, providing resources in neighborhoods that need the most, thinking about making our city more resilient as a whole, public health, and opportunities to build community. Next slide, please. The Parks and Recreation goals are really about accessibility and making the spaces that we're creating available and accessible to all users. We want to make sure that we have a diverse and balanced, efficient mix of uses in the park so that we can serve as many people interests as possible. And of course, meaningful and inclusive community engagement is really important for us. And making sure that all of your voices are heard and reflected in the designs. And then incorporating adaptive and resilient landscapes so that we can battle the challenges with climate change and ecological integrity. And then finally, we want to promote connections between spaces and people. And I'm now going to pass it off to Kyle and Rob, who are our designers and have been involved with this project long before me. And then we'll run through the presentation and open up for discussion at the end. Take it away, Rob.
All right. Thanks, Nellie. This is Kyle Zick from KZLA. We're the designers for this project. And I'm going to give a little bit of a history of the project, but then also chart the course going forward. Immediately, when you look at this slide, you'll see blue dots and red dots. The first red dot in the middle is where we are now. It doesn't mean we're only halfway there. I think we're actually much further along than that, but I'll explain. On the very left-hand side of the slide is 2018, and that's when, through a selection process, KZLA was selected to be the landscape architecture designer for the park. And Destiny Palmer, the artist, was also selected about the same time. We developed designs then and a cost estimate, and then a Community Preservation Act grant application was submitted for additional funding in 2019. In 2020, we changed the scope and extent of the project a bit and did some value engineering to get costs down. And then in 2021, after the CPA grant was awarded, Boston Parks awarded a design contract to KZLA. That was the difference between when Codman Square hired KZLA to when CPA was awarded. It had to go to the city to be the grantee. So that's why we had to be hired again. So that got us going. In 2022, we got a land surveyor to do a site survey, property line, topography, utilities for the site. We gave an update at the farmers market in August of 2022. We did that again in August of 2023. We restarted the project in August of 2023 with Nellie. And then we gave a update at the farmers market in October of 2023, very recently. And that gets us back to where we are today with this community update. So following this update, what we will do is we will advance our design drawings and ultimately get to construction documents, which are the blueprints that go out to bid and contractors will build this project from. And we're anticipating that with the schedule of having us have construction documents done in December, that construction would happen this summer, and that an anticipated park opening would be in the fall of 2024. Next slide, please. So going back to the initial public comments we got when we were brainstorming and said, what does this park want to be? We've held on to these comments, and the words in bold are probably the things to really latch on to. We got comments and sentences and paragraphs and that kind of thing, but people talked about shade and a rain garden, the market, make sure we can have the market and the market works well. A drinking fountain, exercise, more trees, more green, art, flexible seating. So there's a number of things that, we haven't put these comments aside. As we've gone through different generations of the plans, we wanted to make sure we're still achieving these goals. Next slide. So at the same time, when we were getting those comments, we were developing a design back in March of 2019 for the site we're talking about now, the public park, but also we had been talking to Second Church and expanded kind of the extents of the project onto their property as well. That red dashed line in the upper right diagram shows, no, that's not the fence line. That was going to be like a dividing line between phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 being the park that we're talking about tonight. The CPA application is for only improvements on the city-owned parcel, basically this phase 1 we're talking about. So any work on the church property would be a separate project. Next slide. So as we continued to advance the project, the CPA application caused us to focus on just the city-owned parcel. And then we went through that value engineering process where we thought, all right, we've got to distill the design down, simplify it to make sure we can fit the budget. The other piece of that is this project started in 2018 before COVID. Everything is more expensive after COVID, materials, labor, equipment. So the park we could have gotten in 2018 is now less, we can get less in 2023. So we've had to revisit the design, but we've also observed the site over this time period, looked at special events and day-to-day use, and it's caused us to change the design a bit. And that's what we're here to give you a briefing about tonight. All these little drawings on the screen here are things we've explored from 2019 in the upper row to things that happened in 2020, 2022, but are evolving to what you're going to see in 2023. Next slide. And that's, a good segue or transition into some of these, the thinking we have more currently. The left-hand image, the existing conditions are roughly shown here. We've got the surrounding streets in gray, Second Church is to the top, and the existing pathways are shown in white. The wider path that goes right through the center, and then there's the diagonal that goes off to the side that's a little narrower. Now, a lot of that form, particularly the wider path, follows the old street that was closed. So in the 1990s, when the street was closed and the park was created, the major pathway pretty much followed the old street line. And that isn't necessarily the best geometry or design for this park based on the way it works on a day-to-day basis or on a special event occasion. So we started to overlay these red lines. We think of them as desire lines. Where do people want to go? Where do they want to circulate? What do they want to connect to? And it starts to show us a different park form. Something a little bit more circular, if think of it on market day and there's multiple vendors here, you want to shop between the vendors and do a second lap and see who's got the best of tomatoes or who's got the best whatever. It allows you to mingle and, kind of re-go through your course again and again. But it also works from a perspective of, I want to sit in the shade under the tree now, but wait, in an hour from now, I might not be in the shade. I can shift over to another path with another bench under a different tree. But it still works if you're going through the park or connecting or watching, performance on a stage space, or just coming off of the streetscape as part of Codman Square. So it's a long-winded way of saying we've rethought about the design, and hopefully as Rob goes through it in a lot of detail, you get a sense of why it's really a good fit for the way the park is working now and in the future. Next slide.
And we'll take it from here. So again, my name's Rob Brella. I'm an associate in landscape architect with KZLA. And actually, so to build off a couple of things that Kyle just said, this plan that we're looking at now, we'll have a plan, we'll have a bunch of renderings to help illustrate all of this. But this plan is really a culmination of all these, really it's been years now of observations that we've made on this site. And it has really caused us to rethink things as we've heard more feedback, as we've gone to both farmers markets and just the typical day in the park, just to see how that park is currently operating and some of the things that we can do to kind of make improvements. Our hope with this design now is that we feel that this has responded to all of the needs that we've heard thus far and all the feedback that we've gained up to this stage now. And that this will really respond to all the community kind of comments, all the needs, and all the kind of things that you're looking for in this new park design. With this new design, we feel that this park, it wants to be something that's fun and exciting. It wants to offer all different types of reasons to come and stay. It's not just coming for the market day occasionally. It's all different offerings, different reasons to come and visit. I'll start with walking through this plan, and then we'll get into all the different renderings. And the first thing that I would start with this plan is just thinking about the general circulation. And this ties back into the previous slide with just some of these desire lines and these arrows that Kyle had mentioned. So the first thing that you'll notice on this screen are these red arrows that are kind of in bold. So the first thing that we're starting to think about is, how do you get into the park? How do you want to walk through the park? And how is this park connected to the surrounding context in the neighborhood? So these arrows here, start at the bottom left. This is working from Washington Street at the entrance here that is currently at the crosswalk. There is an existing entry over here that we've shifted to be closer to the sidewalk over at the intersection of Center Street and Talbot Street. At the top right, we have another entry point at Center Street, which is where currently vehicles would do the temporary drop-off for market equipment and setup for events. On this top line here, we have 3 arrows. The first on the far right side, this is the existing access point that connects over to Second Church. On the center, we have a connection that we'll get into a little bit more as we start to talk about this performance space in the center here, and thought that this space could tie into the church lawn as well as the park side as well. And then the arrow on the far left side here, this is at the end of the church drive coming around. And based on some old historic postcards that we've come up with, this used to be a connection for pedestrians to be able to pass through. So we're thinking that, as this church, as the landscape on the other side starts to develop, and there could be the opportunity to make that connection through there again, to have pedestrian circulation along the church drive into the park space as well. As Kyle had mentioned, this is a fairly big change if you start to think about the current layout, where it's just one very linear path. And we'll consider that kind of point A to B, where you would start at Washington Street and work straight through to Center Street. So we've really started to think about how you can enjoy the park in different ways, where it's not just passing through, that layout of what the street used to be here. That's kind of what the layout is now, where it's just you're passing through. We want to have these nice interruptions, if you will, and other ways to experience the park from different angles, different ways to be able to see the context and to the neighborhood. You might get different views of the church steeple in the backdrop, and just different ways to interact with this park landscape that, right now, if you go out there, it doesn't necessarily, it seems much more linear. This really gives you a different way to experience the park. So by doing so with this new configuration, we're feeling that this will relate to the context a bit more. This will try to aim to be a much more inviting environment now. This walking loop will start to provide a lot more opportunities for different uses, depending how it relates to the farmer's market, different day-to-day uses and other types of programming needs that might come up. So as you start to walk around this loop path here, you'll start to see that we have this new central lawn space here, and we have other pockets of plantings around the perimeter of the site that kind of serves as the buffer from the streets. The other thing to mention with in terms of a buffer would be this fence line that is existing that we have maintained, and that will show up in the renderings to give you a sense that while we're maintaining some of this fence line, we're also being able to still create new access points and to make it a little bit more inviting from the sidewalk. So that's kind of the gist on the circulation piece. And then another component to look at would be the art component and more performance and more of the programmable kind of things that would pop up in this part. So starting over with this material here, you have this different shade of material. This is still a walkable surface, as you'll see in the renderings. And it starts out at the intersection of Washington Street and Talbot Street here. And it starts to become this threshold into the park that draws you in. It's connective under the I Am Codman installation that Destiny will talk to a little bit more. It wraps into the existing semicircle granite bench that's on site that we've shifted around to be adjusted to this location here. It continues into the park to the Codman Monument, which is existing, but we've shifted to this point here, and then ends at this performance space. So this material is drawing you from the sidewalk all the way into the park and at this performance space here. And the idea is that that becomes this connective piece that ties all these different components that are important to this park and the identity of this park. Then the next would be looking at some of the site furnishings through here. So currently there's only a handful of benches, they're backed benches, they're fairly, just set on this linear pathway through here. And we really want to start exploring and expanding on the types of furniture that are being offered here. What are the different uses that even just changing the furniture, could provide? So for instance, instead of just having benches, we could have benches, tables and chairs. Some of these tables and chairs could be for games. They could have game tables for people to bring checkers or dominoes to, which is something that we've heard a lot about with being on site, of some of the needs or wants that people want to be able to play games here. And then also thinking of other furnishings like bike racks, placing a couple bike racks, which were located over here on Washington Street. And then also looking at a drinking fountain and a bottle fill station, which is over here that will show in the renderings as well. There would also be several trash cans through here that would be new. So over at the entry points over here. And the drinking fountain is right about here. You can see the cursor. The other item to discuss on this plan before we get into the renderings would be vegetation. The darker green trees are the existing trees. We have gone through recently and gotten a survey of the existing trees that are out there. And that really helps us understand, some of the pruning needs that would help the longevity of the existing trees. So we're trying to keep as many of those as possible with some proactive pruning, or if there's any other issues with the trees. And then these brighter green dots here, these are proposed trees. So we're starting to look at some infill planting to provide more shade opportunities. Some of these might be different scales and species. Some might be flowering and some might be for shade trees as well. And then over here on the far right side is where we're showing the rain garden, which is similar to what is at the other intersection of Washington and Talbot Street on the other side. And this would be great, have some signage and it becomes this educational component that is hands-on and then also has a volunteer component for maintenance as well. I'm going to shift into the renderings next as we walk through. I'll start over at the Washington Street side, and it's going to help illustrate all of these things because this seems like a big change from what is there presently. So the renderings will help kind of illustrate some of those proposed improvements. So this is a bird's eye aerial as if you're looking down at the site with Washington Street on your left and Talbot Street on your right. This is the existing crosswalk here. So as you cross the street, you're aimed more on the entry into the park now. This is the artistic piece that Destiny will talk about shortly. I had mentioned about this pavement material that's walkable that starts at the threshold of the site and kind of draws into the space around the semicircle bench here, and then further back in the performance space beyond there. You'll see that there's still a lot of tree coverage here from all these existing trees and the new infill trees that are being proposed. We have the bike racks out at the Washington Street sidewalk here. And then we have a bunch of furnishings, as you'll see, tables and chairs and benches along the pathways. So where that path now would start roughly about this point here and continue straight through. Once you enter the park, you have multiple ways to go. You could either continue back around to Talbot Street, you can continue along and beyond through to the Center Street, and then there's that whole network of pathways under the grove of trees in the center here. The other item to point out on this rendering too is these existing fence panels along here. So these are existing in that we would look at improving upon those and fixing any fix that need to be fixed and whatnot, but trying to maintain sections of these that act as a helpful buffer from the busier street on the other side. So just to have a little bit of protection from that. This is an aerial looking the opposite direction. So now we're over Center Street and Talbot Street looking down. You have the crosswalk down at the very bottom of the sheet here. You'd walk across the street and there's a section of fence with some signage and a break in the fence here, which will allow you to walk in the park rather than on the sidewalk, through the park and out to Washington Street, or to loop back around and end up at Center Street. The one thing I hadn't mentioned yet, and I will talk about more when we get to the event programming kind of diagram that we have of around this street, this side here at Center Street. This is where vehicles currently will pull up and drop off for setup of events. So we are proposing some removable bollards that would be in place to prevent vehicles from entering unless needed for event setup. So they would be removed during that time. So now we start to get more eye level to walk through. So we'll start at one end over by Washington Street and walk through the space through to the other side. So this is as if you're crossing across either Washington Street or Talbot Street, and you get to this intersection here, you get up on the sidewalk, and now you're looking through the park. You'll have signage on the fence. This I am Codman Square lettering that Destiny will talk about more would be kind of prominent and very visible at the intersection here. So this is kind of the gateway that you see as you pass through into the park. Over on the far left side is where we have the bike racks. It's the existing Dorchester sign. This is that connection that I briefly mentioned about the Church Drive, possibly continuing through for pedestrian access. And then we'll have furnishings along the path, and this path diverts over, continuing around that central lawn space over through here. As you continue through the park, you'll see you have views of the steeple here. There's some smaller trees so that you maintain some of those views, but we've still maintained a lot of the larger tree canopies through here. So there's still pockets of shade. We've shifted this semicircle, the granite bench that's out there right now. We have shifted that to be on this side here with some other pavement and opportunities to maybe have some tables there. And then you'll see that we'll have chairs and tables along this path looping around then that centered lawn in the center here. The performance space will be a bump out in the pavement just beyond this point here. As we turn around, now we're walking down the path with Talbot Street behind us. We'll have, you'll see that we have a mix of furnishings now. Instead of just having back benches, we'll have other pieces that can kind of encourage conversation. These furnishings will allow for people to that, if they want to meet up and sit together and play a game, or we'll still have the back benches around there as well. This central lawn looking beyond towards that performance space as well. And you'll get a sense of how this path will continue to curve around, where you can now exit out towards Center Street over on the far right side. Now we've spun around with that central lawn on your left side. We're walking from Center Street in. We'll have the bottle filling station over here on the right, where there's existing water on site already. So this is an easy location to locate it. And we'll have mixed furnishings through here so that if there was to be a performance going on, you'd be able to either sit in this central lawn, or you'd be able to pull up to one of these tables and chairs, or along the bench in this space as well. This is out of the park. When you're crossing Center Street and at Talbot Street, there's the section of fence that continues along the sidewalk here with some park signage, some identification signage, a break in the fence, and this is the new access point to be able to give you other options from either walking on the sidewalk or walking into the park. And from here, you'd be able to continue through to the center lawn in the center of the rendering here, or to the left and end up at Washington Street on the far side. Coming down Center Street on the far right side is where we'd have the rain garden being proposed. You'll see this opening in the fence here that exists that connects to the Second Church parking area. These are the removable bollards that could be removed during event setup, and then would be in place other times to prevent vehicle access. We have maintained a section of fence along here, which would have park signage on it. And then the path beyond showing that, well, you can see some of the furnishings through here, trash receptacles and tables and chairs, and it curving around towards that performance space in the rear there. Okay, So those renderings are kind of the day-to-day park use and what that looks like. So now we'll have a diagram of during an event where, you have a bunch of pop-up tents. What does that look like? So the intent with the path widths in this circular path, as Kyle had mentioned, when you visit a farmer's market, you might want to walk around, visit a vendor again. But the observations that we've made during farmer's market is that, the tents kind of pop up, you'll have some down the path, but the existing curb there is a little limiting so that you can fit a tent and someone that is trying to walk on the pavement as well, within that same footprint of the path. The curbs are a little restricted with that. So you find yourself having to step up the curb, walk across the grass, get to another vendor, etc. Now, this loop here is intended to be able to accommodate people walking on the pavement all the way around and being able to partially fit some of these tents, since we've removed the curb and maintain a width here that we feel that would suit pedestrians and these tents as well, which would be a big improvement for accessibility, especially for anyone using a mobility device with a cane or walker or wheelchair as well, that you'll see in some of these renderings. So we start with this diagram, and at first this seems like a lot of information, but the red dotted line through here is how we envision people being able to walk around during a market or other type of event. These squares through here are all locations where tents could be set up. So a much bigger capacity for more tents while still maintaining pedestrian access on a suitable pavement surface to walk around with. I'd start on the far right side here, this big blue arrow. So this is where the vehicles could pull up for a drop-off for event for unloading of materials. Currently, a vehicle would pull up here and drive all the way to the end and then have to back up all the way back out. And there's a few things with that could be problematic. One, just pedestrian safety. There's also the risk of tree limbs and snapping branches. So their thought is that this still provides an area where vehicles can pull in and drop off and not have to drive all the way through the site to back up. Now, during the prep time, we've understood that it's very helpful to be able to keep this site relatively closed off just for setup of events. So we have maintained a lot of this fence, as we had mentioned, but we have removed the gates and we have removed some of the panels just so we can have more access and entry points into the park. So we are proposing that we could look into temporary measures that could temporarily close off these entries during event setup. So for instance, from the fence post here through the bollard area, could there be some type of post and rope or other signage that just close off this entry here? Similarly, at this opening right here in the fence, could you do a post and rope or a sign here just to close this off during event setup? And then over on the Washington Street and Talbot side, here, this red dotted line, thinking that this could also be some type of more temporary barricade just for event setup, leaving the I am Codman letters still available to see during event setup. The other part that is being highlighted in this diagram is just the stage area in this purple, and then thinking that this could also have some temporary closures on that side as well. So this is a view of the park if there were to be vendor setup. So you see that there's still a width that would be suitable for pedestrians to pass through the tents, partially on the pavement as well for tables, and then maintaining access along in the foreground pathway there. This loops all the way around, and you'll see now there's tents in the background here. This is in that performance space bump out in the pavement, and we'll have the fixed tables and chairs along here. So if there was a performance going on, you'd be able to sit at some of these tables and chairs or in that central lawn space now. And then this is the view from the central lawn looking back towards the church. This is the break in the fence that we talked about before. You have the Codman monument positioned on the left here, and then the furnishings facing the performance space as well. The other thing that we had been told during the last farmers market was the need for electrical outlets. So we would be proposing electrical outlets in this space as well to avoid the need for having those long extension cords that are currently kind of being used today. This is the view from the church side looking back over. So the one of the things we thought about with this in particular, with the removing of the fence panels in this location, is since the park had always kind of been envisioned as tying into the church side as well, and making this feel a little bit more cohesive with the park space, we felt that if you could remove a few panels through here, you start to have that relation to the church lawn and have that transparency between the two that could feel more inviting and have that ability so that you could be on this church lawn watching an event or on the park side, also, looking at the same performance. So this is something that we've kind of explored a bit. It's hard to vision now. There's some temporary, construction going on this side now, but we feel that this could be a way to start the process of making this park feel a little bit more connected to the church park lawn as well. Okay. With that, I'm going to be turning over to Destiny, our artist, who will talk more about the I Am Codman Square lettering out front here. So Destiny, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Good to be in community with you all. So this project has been going on for some years, and it's been really exciting to see it kind of transform. And one of the things that I can recall in the last meetings with you all were talking about making kind of a placemaker for the park, and really it being something that could be interactive, really in a way that wasn't playground, but possibly a place where people wanted to take their picture or kind of interact with it. And so at the last rendering, I think you would have seen, or you would have been familiar with some of the letters just kind of being really stagnant along one of the pathways. And through some manipulation where we are now, really thinking about how adjusting some of the letters together might create more of a playful kind of nature, and really thinking about some of those height specificities where kids could interact with particular letters. I'm also starting to envision or imagine what a bench along the side of it, on the back side of it, might look like. But really, where the design is now is really taking into consideration a lot of what folks have shared, which was the playfulness, creating a really staple, colorful monument that really does draw the eye. And some things that I think Rob was really great with helping me keep in mind was really thinking about the height considerations in this. So if one were to take a photo next to this, you wouldn't want to be obviously in the middle of the intersection doing so. And I'm really excited to see this project kind of move forward, specifically exploring some other fonts and some of the technical sides of this sculptural element. So very quickly, on the right-hand side, you'll see some of those first initial kind of playing abilities to play with some of the font and how much that shifts based on the font that's being used on the left-hand side. But all kind of creating this 360, this moment for a 360 type of interaction with those who are passing by. So I'm really excited to kind of continue this conversation with you all today. So I'm excited. So thank you.
Thank you so much to Destiny and to Kyle and Rob, and also to Cynthia for giving us so much helpful guidance. And thank you all so much for being here. And we know that your nights and time is really valuable, and we really appreciate you spending it with us. And just to remind you, the meeting was recorded, and it will be posted to the project website within a week. So if there are folks that you know couldn't make it to this meeting, please go ahead and share the presentation with them. And you're also welcome to give my email to anyone who's interested. And Shauna, if you could copy and paste the website link into the chat, that would be great. We're in a super exciting point in this project's history. I know you guys have been waiting so long, and finally these pretty pictures are going to go into construction documents, potentially getting constructed next year. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and on the final design and make sure that we've captured all the feedback that we can. So I'll open it up to comments and questions. And we'd love it if you could turn your video on if you feel comfortable. I'll open it up now. If you have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand or enter the question in the chat. I'll ask a question if that would help prompt anybody's questions. Oh, we have a question. Cynthia?
Oh, I am so grateful that you guys incorporated the water feature. So thank you so much. To have a water fountain is a big deal. And I'm also, I put some comments in the chat, really excited about the pathways and the flow. We've had a lot of accessibility issues with the farmers market just because that curb is so high, but the pathways are so narrow. So this is going to be a huge transformation for the success of the market as well. I did have a question with regard to the temporary equipment to kind of block off the entrances. Do you guys have recommendations of things that we can use, or just ideas for us to like think creatively about that? Because that will be important, I think, both to the second church and to the different organizations that put on events in the park. And I just want to be forward thinking about those opportunities.
Sure. Rob, did you want to take that one, or shall I take a stab at it?
Yes. Yep. Well, we can tag team. I'll start. So, yes. So we can definitely provide a list of some items that we think would be applicable for this. You know, we can think about, you know, for a lot of pop-up events, what can be done for these things. You know, sometimes it'll be mix of sandwich boards. Sometimes it'll be like a post and rope system that I had mentioned. In some cases, with some of these entries, it's as simple as just some very temporary thing, whether it's, you know, a rope and a small sign between the two fence posts. And then for some of the larger areas, we'll look into some other types of easy to manage and easy to store pop-up like signage that can kind of be temporary blockades between the two posts of the fence.
And so for a rope and post at the Washington Street entrance, does that mean you guys will be putting in posts for us to connect to? Because I don't see them on the design.
On the larger, yes, so that's one of the larger openings. So we could look into something that if you need to have a post, you know, you actually said something that could be like more of like a sleeve system, but alternatively it could be something more of a sandwich board sign that gets kind of brought out and opened up to just be a very temporary blockade in that sense. So I think we can explore that with you a bit more as well.
Great.
All right, Shauna, do we know who's next?
Okay, Lydia. You can
Hi,
speak.
can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Lydia. I'm also here with my partner, Preston. Thanks so much for the presentation. I think I had one comment, and I think Preston maybe had a question. So it looks like at the corner of Talbot and Center, the path kind of bends. So at the Washington Street edge, there's like kind of a flare that comes into the park that allows for someone to enter kind of easily from any direction. And on the corner of Talbot and Center, it is very much so directed toward a specific point. And I'm kind of curious if it could flare out a little bit more. No, sorry, at where the crosswalk is near the bus stop. Down page southeast. Yeah, that one. If it's also possible to flare that one out in a similar direction, just to make it a more direct path for people that cut through the park from that like from that bus stop in particular serves the 22, 23. So lots of people coming and going from that one, I think. That was my one question, I think. Preston?
I'll echo what Lydia said. Thank you for the presentation, all the thoughtful work that's gone into this. Along the lines of accessibility that was mentioned before, just want to ask if, this surface, which looks like it's concrete, it'd be great if that was all saw cut concrete as opposed to the hand joints, just much more comfortable for people rolling along. And I did want to ask about the lighting in the park. I think sometimes it gets a little dark. It looks like we're maintaining the same lighting. Has there been any notion of, could we brighten it up a little bit at night? Yeah, I think those were the two things that came to my mind.
I can start with the radius down here. So we agree, and we had a wider radius on this at one point. The one thing that we noticed last time we were on site is this existing tree right here, which is in good condition. It has a very shallow root system, and it gets very close to the roots as we start to flare this out a bit more. So the only reason that we were keeping this tighter was just to work with the existing roots, just to not have any negative impacts on that existing tree in the corner here. The question on the comment on the socket joints, I think that is a good comment to note. And then the lighting, we are maintaining all of the existing light poles there and shifting a couple just to work with the pathway. We will be looking at these light posts just to see if anything needs to be retrofitted with LEDs or anything like that, but we'll be looking at those fixtures as well.
Thank you, Rob. And I'll just add at that other corner where Rob was discussing the existing tree, the other thought that we had was about sort of narrowing the entrances at points where there would be a temporary closure, so that the temporary post and rope system, or whatever system ends up being the best temporary closure, could be like minimized in some locations. But we can certainly consider that request to be more connected to the bus stop and circulation pattern. Other questions? Cynthia?
Okay. Oops, Cynthia.
Oh, sorry.
I really like what you guys did with the performance stage area, and I'm hoping Second Church likes it as well. I think Alphonse is on, because it, allows us to get creative with viewing from both parcels, the church parcel and the park parcel. I would love in the future at some point to see more people enjoying the green space, kind of picnic style, utilizing the space differently. So maybe if we can have those proposed bench seating areas spaced out just a little bit, so we can have more line of sight for those that are lower, like sitting on the grass.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense.
And then the other comment was, we received feedback at one of our farmers markets about, I don't know the proper terminology, but when kids put their little faces inside those little kid play areas, and they look like an owl or a butterfly or something like that. And we received some feedback from your team that maybe that could be incorporated into the I Am Codman Square letters in some way, making that more playful for kids. And I think Destiny mentioned, possibly having a bench on the rear side so kids can kind of stand up and be in the letters. But I'm really hoping to see how that fleshes out, because I want to make sure the children that are in the park get to enjoy that art in a very active way.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense, and I know that Destiny is considering that for sure in the design process.
Okay, I think we got a question from Amy. Go ahead.
Yep. Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I just had a question kind of about the from the maintenance side. I there's a lot, it's a nice mix of hard and softscape, But I guess I'm a little concerned about the ease of maintenance for all the green space areas, and that might be challenging going forward. And I'm just trying to think of like a similar park, like on that scale that, I'm just, again, just worried about like the future, if it will be easily maintained. If what you guys think.
Sure. Turf or natural grass is our most low maintenance vegetation that we have staff, BPRD staff that regularly maintains. And as far as the rain garden and the trees, we have different maintenance regimes for those. I'm not worried at all about the grass. Of course, we sometimes get wear lines where people, have desire lines where they're walking through and compacting or wearing down an area. But with this proposed design, the idea is that we've captured those desire lines in the hard surfacing. With the trees, we have an arborist that comes like once a year or as needed to treat any of the trees to maintain limbs. And with the new trees, those will be warranted by the contractor and for a couple of years. And the rain garden, we have a really unique program going on right now with Kate England from the Green Infrastructure Department, where we actually have a volunteer crew that will be coming, that can come to this site and maintain the plantings and the rain garden and be checking on the plants. And so we have maintenance and operations in mind in the design of the green space that we have here.
I'm just going to add one more thing that I think Millie covered it very extensively. I just want to add that, the way that the lawn panels right now are up on a curb makes it a little bit more difficult to get a mower on. And by lowering those to the sidewalk level, it's a lot easier to get the mower straight on there. Some parks have kind of a ramp into a lawn panel if they're going to be raised and curb like that. I don't think anything like that exists in Codman Square. So the mower will be able to roll from one panel to the next and not have to jump any curbs. So that will ease in the maintenance significantly. And we do have some other, if you think about, it's a little bit bigger, but Adams Park in Rosendale Square, which Kyle also designed, is used by a farmer's market and has lawn panels. And so I think we're looking to some of the lessons learned there to inform this design as well.
Okay. We have another question from Lee. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. It looks really nice. And I haven't been involved in past discussions, so apologies if this was already covered or if I missed it. But have you considered including a kiosk for event postings and flyers?
Rob, do you want to jump in on that one?
I don't think we've heard of a need to have a bulletin board or kiosk kind of thing, but if that's something that, if that's something that enough people kind of feel strongly about or want, we could look into that. Yeah, I don't think we've heard that comment this far though.
I find it kind of useful to be able to see what's coming up and what's going on.
It would be very useful. And we actually did an experiment when the city had those digital kiosks, and we had one right in front of the park, and it was very beneficial. We know that we'd be responsible for maintaining it. So to add that to our task list, but it would be great and people would enjoy it. And we've had it in the past and people appreciate it.
Great idea. Thanks for sharing, everyone.
And I think it could be as simple as, a bulletin board, a space to tape up notices throughout the neighborhood. I imagine that the farmers market and the other work that the Codman Square neighborhood council are doing would be a major contributor to that. But it would allow some other postings to occur in the neighborhood as well. So I think it's something that we can continue to work on. And Cynthia, I don't want to obligate you to have to maintain it. I think it's something that maybe, you know, maybe it can be more grassroots managed. We'll see. We can talk about some options.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay, so like I saw in the chat, Lydia asked, will trash or recycling be provided in the park? I'm not sure if she got that answer.
Yeah, I think Rob went over that. Maybe there's the other, or do you want to point out, Rob, where they are? It's a little tough to see on that.
Yeah, this plan's more clear. Yep. So we have let's see, the question would be provided. Yes. So we have receptacles right here towards the entry at Washington Street. We have another one over at Talbot Street, and then another over here at the Center Street entry. So the thought is that we keep them close to the entries for easy access for maintenance.
Yep, and our typical maintenance regime is to pick up trash once or twice a week. So once this park is constructed and open, that would get looped into the regular maintenance schedule.
Okay, Cynthia.
This is my last question. It does look like you guys are removing the tree that's dying in the park based on these renderings. Is that true?
Are you referring to this one right here?
No, the one that's closer to Washington Talbot. I don't know if you guys remember seeing it at the farmer's market. It was struggling.
The crabapple tree that's kind of out in the paving area.
Oh, yeah.
So so there's a small tree over here in the pavement area with the tree grate that one is being removed. There's this Crimson King Norway maple here that was deemed as a hazard tree over here. And then the spruce tree has a lot of deadwood that we could look into pruning. That is what the recent tree survey assessment has shown us. So we are showing a new tree for the spruce tree as well.
Oh, great. And then just some history. We wanted one of our existing trees to serve as our tree that's used for the annual tree lighting with the mayor, but they told us time and time again that our tree just grew too high, so they couldn't light it. So they bring this little rinky-dink tree out to the park that we don't really like every year. Based on any of the new plantings or maybe this planting that's happening in the center, is there a tree that we could potentially use for the tree lighting?
Absolutely. We can certainly work on that.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like we have a couple of proposed trees in the central lawn area that might be good contenders for that. Cynthia, you're welcome to ask as many questions or have as many comments as you want.
Thank you. I'll just add that you guys have just been really phenomenal to work with. Kyle and Rob, you guys have been great coming out to the site, listening to all of our ideas and actually incorporating them. You haven't missed a beat at all. Destiny has been a pleasure, really responding to the art ideas that we had and bringing her expertise into this project and bringing everything to life. And the Parks Department has been great too. So this has really been a fun project and we're just so excited that we're heading into construction in 2024, finally.
And I think I speak for the whole project team that having you, Cynthia, has been wonderful and incredibly helpful and supportive. And I think your whole community would say that as well. Anybody else? Well, if we're getting towards the end of the night and we have no further questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You have my email. If anything else pops up in your mind that we didn't get to ask or concerns after you review the presentation slides anymore, please go ahead and reach out to me and to the design team. And thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. And please visit the project website for more updates on our process. And otherwise, thank you so much and have a wonderful night.